Hi everyone, I'm back. I hope you enjoyed those examples of cover songs from the 1950s, all very important and very well-known covers in the birth of rock and roll, and also important R&B records from the 1950s. So I hope you enjoyed it. So I'm here with a quick wrap-up to finish off this presentation and let you go on to Module 2 and attack the discussion topic on the controversy of cover versions. So cover versions have a lot of uses, and they're good. They've been good in the business for a lot of reasons, and a couple of the reasons are the cover versions are good for emerging artists who use a well-known song to introduce themselves to the public. It can signal an artist's desire to change his or her style. That's another good use of cover songs. And a cover song can also be a great asset to songwriters, because the more records of your song that are sold out there, the more you earn in songwriter royalties. And a good example I can give you is Big Mama Thornton recorded the song Hound Dog in 1953. Now, since 1953, approximately 255 cover versions of that song have been recorded, and Elvis wasn't even the first. Okay, so what that tells me is that there are 256 records out there being sold that are all earning royalties for the songwriters of the song. So one good popular song could mean a lot of songwriter royalties. So you can believe that songwriters are all in favor of cover songs. They wanted, the more covers they had, the more money they made. Okay. So you saw examples of all three categories of cover songs. Mimic covers are usually the most troublesome to many of my students, and often kind of disturbing. And that's because mimic covers are meant to sound as close to the original as possible. Okay, and the original music track is almost identical, but the original singer, who was usually black, was removed, and a new singer was inserted, who was usually white, and that's the controversy. Now, later on in the module, if you come to the Zoom class on Tuesday, I'm going to also play you cover versions that don't fit into this category, so or don't fit into this method of removing the black artist and inserting a white one. There's all kinds of mimic covers out there, and I'm going to play you a couple of them just so you know that that wasn't the only way mimic covers were made. Then rendition covers. Well, you know, there could be a lot of reasons for making a rendition cover, but the fundamental reason is that the covering artist, can't sing or play like the original artist. You know, so it's just going to sound differently, right? Another reason for the rendition covers is the covering artist loves the song but wants to change its style to fit his or her voice, or his or her style, or the style of music that his or her fans expect. And Elvis's covers fit into that category. Almost all of them do. And that was Elvis's genius. He took the song, and whether it was an R&B song or a country song or whatever, and he made it his own. He made it his own sound. He only chose songs that he could sing well, that fit his vocal range, that he could make sound like an Elvis song, and that's rendition covers, and so the songs were recognizable, but they were Elvis songs. Now they didn't sound like the original. They weren't reminiscent of the original. Okay, and then there's the transformative covers are great for artists who hear something, in a song that maybe is a different message than the original, or a different sound. It's hard to explain, but a good example I'll give you is Simon and Garfunkel recorded a song called The Sound of Silence in 1965. And it was kind of a folk protest song that chided people about being conformist. Okay, that you didn't want to be conformist. In the late 1960s, being a conformist was a dirty word. Being establishment, that was a dirty word in the 60s, establishment. Oh, he's so establishment. That wasn't a compliment, okay? There was a counter-revolution going on. There was a counter-culture going on. And you didn't want to conform to the older generation's style or form or anything like that. So, more than 40 years later, a band called Disturbed, who many of you probably know, made a cover of the song The Sound of Silence, And to me, it sounds like someone is contemplating suicide. It's dark, it's depressed, it's really not the original song at all. Now, it is the song, you recognize it, but it's totally different texture, totally different feeling, transformative cover. See? Okay. Now, one more thing I want to talk about that's mentioned in your textbook that's usually met with some annoyance, I guess, or I don't know. It's not received well. Is the one-time flat fee buyout deal that you're going to read about in the textbook. Now, and the buyouts are another aspect of this story that we have to talk about briefly. Now, remember how I said in the first video that as the owner of a song that you've written, you have the right to sell, to lease, to give away, to do whatever you want with it. You could wrap fish with it if that's what you know, it's your property. You could do with it what you want. Well, a lot of these R&B artists, most of them, practically all the R&B artists, recorded for these small independent labels. And these small independent labels were really, really, really strapped for cash. Sometimes, some months the choice was paying the salaries and paying the electric bill. I mean, there was really close budgets all the time. And they were just one step ahead of bankruptcy most of the time. So a lot of times, you know, in order to pay songwriter royalties, you need an accountant. You needed money in the checking account. You needed staff to research the percentage of the songs and who the songwriters were and how much percentage each one gets and find out their addresses and mail them and all that stuff. You had to staff up. And these small independent labels just didn't have the money to pay staff 4 times a year to cut these checks, these songwriter royalty checks. So what happened was this buyout deal, which was a sort of a survival tactic by the record label, and actually not a bad option for the artist. So here's the deal, and this actually happened with the owner of Sun Records, the great Sun Records label, R&B label in Chicago. I'm not Sun Records, I'm sorry, Chess Records. Leonard Chess was the president of Chess Records, and one of his artists was Muddy Waters. And Muddy Waters had just cut a record, and he said, "Listen, Muddy, here's the deal. You made $5,000 in royalties on the last record. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pay you $5,000 right now. I'm going to write you a check for $5,000. What you're going to do is you're going to write the song over to me. You're going to sign the song over to me. So over the next couple of years, royalties will trickle in, and I'll make the royalties, and maybe you'll come out a little bit ahead. Maybe I'll come out a little bit ahead, but it'll be a wash. It'll be about even, okay? But the good part is that you'll have your cash that you would have earned over a period of years, and I won't have to hire all that extra staff to pay the royalties, and so we both win." And that was the deal, and that was usually a win-win for R&B artists and for the labels. R&B artists made most of their monies from live shows. Only a small portion of their income was from songwriter royalties. So they had the money up front. They didn't have to wait for years and years for the money to trickle in. And also, they had to admit that these independent labels were so broke they could go bankrupt. And if they went bankrupt, then there's no songwriter royalties. So get the money up front and go out and do your shows and make your money. And that was a win-win. Again, perfectly legal, 100% legal. And also another misconception is that these R&B artists were uninformed and uneducated and didn't understand what they were getting into, and there was basically the rights for their songs were stolen from them. And that's absolutely not the truth. Most of these R&B artists were industry veterans, and they knew the business inside and out, and they knew their rights, and they knew the law, and they made these deals with their eyes wide open going in because it worked out for them, okay? It probably wasn't a good deal if you were recording for Decca or for Columbia or something like that, but for these small labels, it made a lot of sense. So again, it was a win-win deal, and it was perfectly legal, not exactly theft, and it wasn't taking advantage of people who didn't understand their rights or their laws. And I wanted to put a button on that so we can move on. Anyway, all right. So, what can we make of all this? After all, the birth of rock and roll is important. So how can it be so full of controversy? And that's what you're going to have to form an opinion on in M2.2. Now in that assignment, I gave you the two extremes, the two polar opposites, okay? I asked, do you feel that cover versions were fundamentally racist, or do you feel covers were good for business? Fundamentally racist, you know, just taking advantage of black people and no good and racist and terrible, or absolutely nothing wrong. No difference whatsoever. I mean, perfectly good for business, perfectly okay. It's been done for decades, it's perfectly all right. The other one I asked is, were black artists ripped off, or were these cover versions understandable within the context of the music business practice of the day? So again, theft, ripped off, torn out of their rights, torn out of their hands, or on the other side, nothing to see here, folks. Keep on moving. Nothing to talk about here, right? So you have to ask yourselves the right questions when you're thinking about this topic. For example, if covers were legal and a standard part of the business and not theft, and if the buyout deals were also perfectly legal, why is there a cover version controversy? Okay, if everything is legal and buttoned up, why were black artists the only ones who were hurt? If it was a level playing field, white artists and black artists would have been hurt uniformly, but that's not what happened here. So your job is to sort out and think about all this info and come up with an opinion for this discussion topic, okay? And remember, please remember, there's no wrong answer here. I want to see how you use all this information to form an opinion, because that's what historians do. We gather up all the information and we form an opinion based on the information we have, okay? And there's no wrong opinion as long as you base your opinion on the material. So I'm going to stop there, and I hope you enjoyed this presentation and the cover versions. And also remember that I'll be online on Tuesday to talk a little more, one more time, a little more about this topic and play you some interesting texts. And I hope you can make it there too. But for now, move on to M2.2 and make me proud. Okay, see you later. Bye-bye.